a lot of people have been calling me, and a lot of people have been calling other people with their ideas, and all the ideas are good ideas. That is to say, all the ideas strike me as being worthy of further discussion and further exploration, worthy of being pursued. Some of these ideas I've tacked up around the wall with pieces of paper underneath them as to what, with room to sign your name and address if you're interested in that particular idea. However, I'm just one person, and these are just one person's ideas. Some of these ideas may be lousy ideas, and there may be other ideas in the audience today that are better or worthy of pursuing in addition. Some of the ideas I've thought of or people have brought to my attention fall into about 8 categories, and I'm going to spend 5 or 10 minutes on them, and then, as I say, sit down. But one problem with the, as I mentioned at the beginning, too much organization, not enough organization, too diffuse, or not formal enough, is that, again, if we go off into 8 different directions, that might be a mistake. And we'll have a little bit of work on 8 different problems, which might be interesting and it might be somewhat productive, but it might not bring the lights off the tower. It might be better to focus on just one thing or on 2 things and focus all of our energy towards pursuing those avenues. I don't know. I didn't know how many people were going to turn up today, and I don't know if the fact that 35 of you are here means that really means that there's 350 people who wish they could be here, or maybe this is it. So there's a lot of questions that can't be answered, but you have to begin somewhere. And I thought we might as well have a meeting, and let me discuss a couple of the ideas that I had that might or might not be worthy of pursuing. The hottest topic seems to be that of a boycott. And it's been suggested to me, and I know other people have been speaking of the idea of directing our attention towards getting those people who advertise on WATV to stop advertising on WATV. WTZA, that's right. Sorry about that. With the hope of applying economic pressure on WTZA as one of the fruitful methods. Some people have said, well, we just can't start boycotting. We have to send a letter to the advertisers saying we're concerned about the lights. We would appreciate it if you would stop, and you have given you 1 month, and if you do stop, we'll publish your name, and then we'll all go buy your products and so on. I don't know. There's a range problem. I don't know if the people who advertise on the radio, on the TV station, are in Newburgh and Poughkeepsie, in which case a boycott from Woodstock would have very little effect. I don't know whether a boycott for such grounds is even legal. I just don't know. It would be a mistake to pursue an illegal boycott and then have us all sued for millions of dollars in damages. But there is such a thing as a boycott, and there are legal boycotts. I just don't know what they are, but I think that that's a category that certainly would be very worthy. Pardon me? I don't know what an illegal boycott is. I only know that there is such a thing as an illegal boycott. If I knew what the difference was, well, I'm only suggesting that the legality of it be pursued along with all the other things. How it would be conducted, how you would go about publicizing the names of the people that you want boycotted, all that. It's a long endeavor. It's difficult to do. It takes a lot of time and effort. And one of the issues that should be discussed along with all the others is it legal? It would be silly to go off half-cocked and call a boycott without exploring all these issues first. That's all I'm saying. That's one category. Another category that people have brought to my mind has been whether we should focus our energies on recalling certain members of the town board, certain members of the planning board who we think are very insensitive to this issue or who got it screwed up in the first place. Again, I don't know even what the mechanism is for a recall. I don't even know if there is a mechanism for a recall. But that would be another category. I thought of the idea of having a few people sit down for later use and trying to collate as much information as they can about the history of Overlook Mountain itself. Famous painters who have painted Overlook Mountain, writers who have written about Overlook Mountain, Indians who have lived on Overlook Mountain, so that when the time comes, the richness and the cultural treasure aspect of that natural resource will be at hand. There's a great deal of confusion, and I think this confusion goes to the town boards as well as to the public at large, as to what was in the original application of WTZA. What representations did this make? How high did they say it was? Was there any misleading going on? Was there any fraud, or was there any deceit? Was it true that they really had the tower up when they made the application, or did they have the building permit before? All these questions that everyone's talking about and everybody has a very definite opinion on, nobody really knows. Nobody really knows the answers to those questions, which can be found out. But it takes 2 or 3 or 5 people, 2 or 3 or 5 weeks of work to get all that together. That's another area that might be pursued. A fourth, or I forget what number I'm on already, category which might be pursued is the impact of the tower on your property values and taxation. As you know, if you have a view, when the assessor comes around, the view thing there is a category in the assessment sheet called view, and if it's a good one, you're assessed for that. Your property taxes are increased if your view is a good one. And the question would arise, does this tower, if it's in the line of view from your property, affect your property assessment? Should it? Would it be a good idea to sue the town or protest to the town that you're paying too much taxes because you're being taxed for a view which has now been diminished by this thing? Or would it be a good idea to sue WTZA for that, for ruining your view and lowering your property values? Again, I don't know the answers to these questions. I certainly don't know the legalities of it. I don't know the procedures of it, but that would be a good thing, I think, if people are interested to team up and check it out. What other areas? Are there any signs up there that I put up that I didn't chat about? Some people suggested civil disobedience. I don't know. It's a good idea, maybe, but I don't know who it will be directed against, or when, or what form, or does it mean on the mountain, or does it mean in the town board? There's a lot of great ideas, but it's very difficult to pull them together into a meaningful strategy. And again, as I say, that may be too many ideas. It may be silly to go off into sub-areas when we should really just focus on the boycott, or really just focus on recalling the town board, or whatever. So I can bring these ideas up at a meeting. I can have a meeting, but I can't do the whole show, and unless people are interested in pursuing some of these areas or new ones, nothing's going to happen. So if you're interested in joining up, please do so. Please pay $5. It costs money as well as human energy to get anything done. And who wants to say something? Mr. Goldberg.
Alan, first, thanks very much for taking responsibility for leadership on this issue. I think that a boycott would be the most effective and direct and immediate way of accomplishing what I believe everybody in this room wants to accomplish. There are some technicalities, I believe, about economic boycotts, but they certainly are legal. There's been a boycott of Nestle in regard to formula going on for years, and it was very, very effective. And I think it would be very easy to find out from the group called In Fact that conducted that boycott exactly what, how to do it legally. And I think not only the boycott itself, literally staying away from advertisers, but the threat of the boycott to potential advertisers is incredibly powerful, because even though they may be in Newburgh or some far distance, who wants to get involved with spending money on advertising that may be diminished or in any sort of controversial area? And I think also the fact that it is Overlook Mountain, the gateway to the Catskills, that is important to a lot of people who live in Woodstock and live outside of Woodstock. The Friends of the Hudson, all the environmental groups in this area, I think will rally around it because it is such an important mountain, and just, not any particular one of the Catskills, but it is a central one. So I think that if we can get a few people to take records as to who advertises on it, let the public know who they are and why we're doing what we are, and even potentially picketing WTZA to let people who go there know what's going on, I think would have very, very immediate repercussions. It wouldn't involve legal suits and being in the courts for years and years and years. And I'll help.
Boycotts, what you're saying.
Boycotts.
I agree.
Joy.
Yeah. I agree that we should boycott. I agree also with everything that you suggested we pursue. I have one other thing I think we should really do, and that is that after the tower comes down, we should have people now concentrating on drafting future environmental law so that there's never a tower breaking the mountain skyline again. I think that's very important. The other thing is, I have this weird article from the Times Herald Record yesterday that says that Edward Swire said that he doesn't mind moving the tower if the town or group pays for it. To move the tower is very expensive, he said. Now, of course, I'm very insulted, and I think it's a joke. But I also think, since lawsuits are expensive, and the lawyers that I spoke to say it could take years to get the tower off the mountain, that perhaps we should pursue raising money in addition to everything else and see what he's talking about to move it, because he says here he would. Well, I don't know, but it seems to me that they may be closer to doing it than we think.
Just the mounting it, or is that the putting it up?
We're talking about putting it up.
Yeah, do you have any thoughts on what to do?
Say, but I can wait.
Well, I don't see any hands up, so.
I think it would be a mistake tactically to proceed only with a boycott for a number of reasons. There's no guarantee a boycott will succeed for a number of reasons. The first reason, and I'm in favor of boycotts. I'm just saying that the reason the boycott might not fail is that this Guy Chevalier represents a very large Albany fortune. They can afford to lose money from now till the end of all our lives, probably, if they wanted to. It may be perceived by them as a political asset as much as an economic asset. That is, an information source for the Mid-Hudson that certain political interests can use. So to say that if we get the local Subaru dealers to stop running ads might be an error. That they may just continue because they can just run state Commerce Department ads and Special Olympic ads in between their Francis the Talking Mule reruns, you know. So then go on forever. But I think it's that politically, though, they are liable to pressure, and I think that a boycott should be part of an overall strategy. I think part of the strategy should involve using the new Environmental Bond Act to get the state forming an alliance with the DEC and other Hinchy and other political interests to purchase all the land on top of the mountain, or get conservation easements or air rights or something, so that you secure not only the spot near the hotel where the current tower is, but all the whole 250 acres up there, and make it forever free of. So I would propose as part of the information is that people with a lot of knowledge and a lot of energy in this town help form a consortium to look into getting that land under the Environmental Bond Act just passed, and getting Chevalier way out so he can look like a good guy, take his tower out of there, turn the land over. I mean, you could probably get some money even for dismantling of the tower, maybe from the environmental bond. I would not want to spend tax money that way, but it's conceivable it could happen. So that's one thing. I think looking into, because what's the future of that tower is not for television. Television as a broadcast medium from a big high radiation tower is going to be obsolete soon. It's all going to be cable. So you have to ask yourself, what is the future of that tower on our mountain? The future, in my view, of that tower on the mountain is as a microwave farm. And you go down, if you drive north off of the Palisades Parkway, when you come off the George Washington Bridge, you look to your left, about 5 miles north of the George Washington Bridge, you see a tower very much like this, only what it's overloaded with, not television towers. It's like a kudzu, it's like this hideous War of the Worlds zone of microwave dishes, and that's the future. It's cheap. It's the way you transmit bank information and this and that. That mountain's a big line of sight. So we got to get the tower down to avoid what the ultimate future, which is microwave. So I think another area of research is in the effects of microwave radiation on humans and plants. So therefore, I think in addition to all the research, I think we should plan and research suits. I think a suit, again, I agree with you, a suit against WTZA for perhaps the property thing you mentioned, or perhaps other things, or perhaps to set aside a few $1 million for environmental zones or parks or something. In other words, I think it's time to make it a monetary issue, and that they are damaging our town monetarily, and that they should pay. Svire was born with a silver tower in his mouth. He's got plenty of money. And then also, I'm a little afraid of the current political situation in this town. You have an equivalent of a two-chamber bill. In other words, in the Assembly, if you want to propose a bill that you don't really want to propose, you run it through the Assembly knowing that the Senate is not going to pass it. I think we may have a situation here. Unfortunately, I think the town board may on paper express a willingness to tear aside the special use permit, knowing the planning board won't do it. So I think that we should make plans to prepare a suit against the town, not really trusting them to, and get it ready just in case they don't do what's right by us. And I think it's unfortunate we might have to, at this time, sue for monetary damages. But I think, I think we should look into the possibility. I know that that may not be possible. I think we should look into the possibility of suing members of the planning board and possibly members of the town board for monetary damages personally, and to, instead of suing the town itself, sue the people that are responsible for it personally, their personal assets. I have one more point, and that is with respect to research on microwaves and especially television radiation. We've been trying to get a field strength meter so we can go up there and measure the radiation around the hiking trail going into the tower. We've had some difficulty in locating a field strength meter. So is anybody in the community that has a field strength meter that can measure the amount of radiation at the base of the tower and around the edge of the tower, we'd like to borrow it or go up with you and take a field strength meter, especially on the Ranger Tower. That Ranger is sitting in there May to November, getting a lot of radiation, and we'd like to find out exactly how many milliwatts this guy's getting. Thank you.
Before I continue calling in, which I intend to do, some people have to go, and some people here just for 10 minutes, and they can leave them. If before you leave, you have the opportunity, if you wish, to sign your name under any of these particular topics that are around the wall over there, if you're interested in pursuing them. I should add just one thing, that it's my assumption, I don't know if it's shared by you or not, that just because the town is appearing to be finally taking some initiative on this issue doesn't convince me that A, they're serious, or B, they're going to pursue it with the vigor that I think they should. And I don't think that we can count on them to be as strong or as vigorous as they would like us to think that they are. I don't think that their past actions give truth to their present behavior. And I think that therefore it is necessary for a group like ourselves to apply pressure on them always, all the time, every meeting, every time we can, so that they know, or that they think, or even if they misperceive the amount of strength of community feeling, because it's a political issue and these are political people, and democracy works. It works at least in the sense that people who people who represent you will respond to pressure, even though they like to think that they don't. They do. Eileen.
I just want to know if you are discussing here, and it is the feeling of this group, that you are talking about taking down the tower altogether, or are you just talking about the lights? Because as far as the board is concerned, my understanding that we at the present are only discussing the problem of the lights. And that's what you heard. So it sounds here like you are not even thinking about the lights. You are going to want to go to a much bigger step.
I would answer that by saying some of us do and some of us don't. I think that no one is here who is not against the lights. Some of us are here because they're against the lights and the tower. And insofar as those who are against the tower because there are lights on them, that's enough for me. I'm going to stop working when the lights go down. If other people want to continue about the tower, that's fine. But as far as I'm concerned, whether the lights come down either because the lights come down or because the only way that the lights can come down is to have the tower come down, either way.
I want to ask one more question. Has anybody done any investigating of shortening the tower? I mean, supposedly it's the height that is why we have to have the lights. And there's nobody here, Ed, have you not done any? No, because you want the tower down altogether.
Well, it doesn't stop me from doing a lot of investigation. I have, like half a foot of files here. Well, the issue on the reducing the tower is the radiation is inverse, inverse the square of the distance from the radiation source. So you knock 100 feet off that tower, you've got a radiation problem for hikers and stuff. So what you're going to have to do is, it's a bigger legal problem really than taking the well. You're going to have to petition the state to move their hiking trail, which goes right by the tower as it is, at some, I don't know where would you take it around and up, or get the Appalachian Trail Club to put a new, I don't know, it's they got a problem, got a radiation, you already have a radiation
Well,
problem.
there's something about they can do somehow that the radiation goes up rather than down.
That may be,
Whether that makes it any better, I don't know.
that may be.
The tower also has to do with the strength of the signal reaching the market that WTZA wants to reach, and I think they have a vested interest in wanting to keep it the height that it is so that they can reach as far as they do.
Well, one of the original assertions by the station was that if they knocked the height down, they'd lose Saugerties, something like they'd lose the north. And WTZA means Tappan Zee, Albany, so they want to strafe up and down the Hudson. The fact is that their economic base appears to be Kingston and Poughkeepsie, so maybe they should find a place near their ad base for their tower. I don't know. I mean, knocking it down is an option that should be explored also. Knocking down the height.
Wasn't they supposed to in their original permit, weren't they supposed to have the tower much lower than that to start with?
Well, this is one of the issues that I suggested ought to be explored. I don't know the answer to that, and I think that there's probably 3 different opinions in this room as to what that was. But somewhere the answer to that question exists. I would like for my people to sign that particular piece of paper, and they could get those answers, and it would be beneficial to the next step. Whatever that first step is, getting the facts. That's my feeling, is getting the information so that we can then decide what's the most profitable avenue to pursue. And that's a good one.
To me, there's an article in the paper this week where Laval talks about this, to bring that TZA to lower the tower at the height that they were supposed to have it in the first place. And this way they would have avoided the light problems and everything else. I don't know why they made it twice as big as they were supposed to. But if they did, if they, reapplied for another permit or really made the tower at the height that they were supposed to put it, that would avoid a lot of problems.
Somewhere that information exists, and it may even be that there's some reason why that information isn't known by all of us. And I think that we should find out. Rod?
Alan, I'd like to suggest the formation of another group which would be a small group of individuals whose task it would be to make direct contact with the owners of WTZA, Mr. Swire is his name. And since I was very encouraged to hear that someone thought that this is a very wealthy organization and that money is no object to them or not of considerable concern. If that's the case, then to move the tower, which would cost perhaps a couple of $100,000, might be an inexpensive solution for them, since they're a new organization, and before all of the negative publicity that could take place, does take place, before there are boycotts, before we assume that they are necessarily bad people coming from a bad place, maybe they are good people. Maybe they would be swayed by the potential deleterious effect of all of these different things that we're talking about. And maybe they would choose to become heroes in this community and in the Hudson Valley and taking a voluntary step to avoid this problem. So what I'm suggesting is the formation of a small group of individuals who might undertake that aspect after perhaps they're armed with some of the data that we would collect from the formation of these other groups.
I would be very optimistic about that, because if they're really good guys, in the first place they would have found another mountain to put the tower on, and in the second place they would have put it at the height they were supposed to, instead of making twice as big.
Okay, I believe that this is a situation where the original applicants are different than the current owners. I believe that that our good friend Dean Gitter was the individual who I believe incorrectly stated the height that the tower was going to be, or there was some inaccurate information that he gave to the town in order to get the permit. And then he built a tower that was taller, which in fact I understand after the fact now needs lights. And this group that currently owns the station, who bought it from Gitter, did not either put in the original application or erect the tower. I'm not sure about the latter part, but I think it's worth a shot.
They erected the tower.
They did.
Just to clear up a question here, the permit that WTZA has is for a 299-foot tower. It is not taller than it was originally going to be. The problem is that the FAA sent 2 letters to the town board that at that height the lights would not be required, but since then have changed their mind. That's what's happened.
Yeah, I would, personally, I think that the lights issue is the best chance we have to get the whole tower removed, and I don't think we should stop with taking down the lights. But I would like to know from whoever is most up to date on this, what the court case that's in the state Supreme Court is about, who's behind it, what the status of it is, what other legal actions are happening already, and what the potential outcome of those legal actions are. Before, I would rather also see us pressure the town board or the planning board or both. I must admit that I'm skeptical as to their pressure ability. But still, I think that the town government itself going after the tower would be, if we could basically say that, you know, we're going to take you out of office if you don't do something about this botch that you did. And we could come up with enough names to say that we could do it. That would be a much better avenue than an ad hoc group trying to make a lawsuit. I think if we could get the town acting on our behalf, we would have a lot more clout. Not that we shouldn't pursue the other avenues. But I would like somebody to explain what is already happening. I also think that pursuing getting the company, the TZA, to move the tower, I read that same article in the Record yesterday that the guy said he was willing to move it if somebody would pay for it. The fact that he's willing to move it at all, I think is a great advantage that we should pry some leverage in there and get him to move it, whoever pays for it, somehow or another. The fact that he's said that he's willing to, I think, is a big step. So anyway, I'm asking a question and making a statement. If anybody can answer those questions, I'd like to know.
What we want to know about the lawsuit that's currently...
Yeah. And who is sponsoring that?
Well, the only lawsuit I know about is Friends of Woodstock's lawsuit, which was initiated a year ago, last December.
Okay, the restraining order from last week that got put off. What?
Right now, one is in which the Friends of Woodstock are suing the planning board for having given them the permit in the first place, or perhaps the planning board and the ZBA together, I don't know. No, the challenging... Thank you.
WTZA is co-respondent.
Okay. That lawsuit addresses the legality of the thing being there itself. That's been sitting on Justice Bradley's desk for about 7 months, and he's not issued an opinion on it, maybe closer to 9 months, I don't know. There's another lawsuit in which the town taxed the radio station for the use of the property, and the radio station is saying, we don't think it's taxable, or we don't think it's taxable at the rate that you're charging us. And the town is defending that lawsuit. The planning board is defending the first lawsuit. The third lawsuit is the one brought by the town of Woodstock itself last week, in which they're seeking an injunction against WTZA for violating the special use permit. That's the one which is scheduled for a hearing no sooner than February 2nd, and I have reasons to believe that it's not going to be heard at all, because the station is probably going to remove it to federal court. But in any event, those are the three ones that I know of that are pending, and the town is, in my unsolicited opinion, is probably going to lose the one of the injunction against the lights. I don't think we can count on that. David?
Yeah, there's a fourth suit, which is the estate of Albert Grossman against that WTZA. When the Friends of Woodstock brought the suit against the planning board, the ZBA, and the building inspector, because the WTZA built a facility for which they had not yet received a special use permit. And at the public hearing, it was only because of concerned citizens speaking that the light concern was brought up, that the amount of appurtenances were brought up, and would never have been included in that special use permit had it not been for good citizens looking out after their own business. I believe that somewhere judges, like ministers and rabbis, have a sacrosanct protection and have all the right in the world. And I think it's mostly in criminal cases where a right to a speedy trial is important. But I also think that everyone must be subject to public pressure, concern, and interest, and to what interest it is for the judge to sit on this case for what duration of time. I believe there must be some means of bringing that out, of getting that answer. The most important thing, I believe, is the basis of the Friends suit, which challenges not the area variance that was ultimately secured through deceptions being presented to the ZBA by a firm that was just reappointed as the town attorney, showing tremendous conflict of interest and a gross lack of concern on the part of our town board for appointing someone who was so intimately involved in this suit. Well, you were looking at me, so I was in turn. The question the question that's really there, the big question, according to Anderson's law books, the big question in terms of variance is not area variance, how high it is or how close it is to a setback, but it is use variance. That is the big question. And I think that that question covers basically covers the multitude of sins, so to speak, against our laws, state and local laws, that should be addressed. And I think that, albeit the Honorable Vincent Bradley must be a very busy man, but we are also very concerned people. And I understand that to speak ill of a judge in any sense is to be in contempt of court. But there must be some means of appealing to the court to hear this case that has subsequently allowed other cases to pile up on it because it is yet to be resolved. And I think that like the boycott, most of this stuff goes down because enough people are not sufficiently present enough of the time to make sure that both elected and appointed officials do the right thing. And by that I mean comply with both the letter and the spirit of the law. And there has been a violent disregard for both the letter and the spirit of the law. And how long that's permitted or allowed, and maybe our learned attorneys might have some idea of how to approach that. But the original case presented over a year ago, that's the case that should be answered because that case deals with the whole problem. Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to make 4 points. First of all, I'd like to disagree with 2 things that have been suggested. Then I'd like to agree with 2 other approaches that have been suggested. Let's take the easy one first. I think personally, from a technical viewpoint, we'd be wasting our time trying to get radiation meters and what have you. I've done a lot of reading on the subject, and I'm pretty much convinced that the radiation that comes out is typical of radiation that they might have had in the Empire State Building with lots of people really close. I think it'd be kind of a waste of time considering the limited energy that we have. Perhaps an even greater waste of time would be the idea of a boycott. I think a boycott, if that was the only thing we're going to do, considering the alleged financial resources of this company, would just go on and on and on and on. And seeing many of my friends here and knowing the history of Woodstock activists in being able to sustain an effort over a period of time, I would guess it just wouldn't happen. So those are the 2 things that I would say we mightn't want to focus on. The technical issue of radiation, as well as the chance of carrying on a sustained boycott, especially in the area that will be the marketplace. The 2 ideas that I think do have merit, more merit than the others, would be to try to consider this as really being A, political problem, and B, possibly trying to negotiate with the owners to move the tower. So I would come to one very, very singular objective, and that might be, how could we cause the tower to be removed? Well, it looks like money would move the tower. You know, regardless as to who should or shouldn't pay for it. It looks like if someone is willing to spend $100, $150, or $200,000, the tower will be moved. So now we have to collectively determine the value of our mountain. And we would say, gee, is our mountain's beauty worth $150,000? I think the answer would be yes. So one approach we might take would possibly be to negotiate in good faith with the owners and say, gee, it looks like there was possibly a comedy of errors or probably malfeasance or incompetence on the part of the town, et cetera, for letting you build it in the first place. Tell you what, you pay half and we'll pay half. So this means that the town of Woodstock, us, each one of us, would have to spend $75,000. And now you have to ask yourself the question, even though we shouldn't pay $75,000, is it worth our while to take this noxious thing off our hands forever and ever, and by the way, see if we can get the DEC to buy it? So that would be, I think, a reasonable strategy to go after the removal of the tower, face up to the fact that someone's going to have to pay some money, try to work out the best deal that we can, with possibly the town paying half. Which poses the next question. Why should we, the taxpayers, get stuck as a result of the dumbness or arrogance or ineptitude or incompetence or what have you on the part of the combination of the town board and the planning board? That's a good question, which raises the other question, what might we do to somehow try to cause these two groups to come to their senses? Well, in this issue and on future issues. And what I specifically have in mind is a very, very basic disregard for the environment that the town board and the planning board has. Case in point, to me, it would seem obvious if somebody wants to put a big tower up on our mountain, it's an issue affecting the environment. Did the town board or the planning board take 2 minutes to call the environmental commission and say, gee, do you have an opinion on it? Absolutely, positively not. And that is symptomatic, I believe, of the greater malaise affecting our town and the environment. The continued disregard of those two agencies for environmental issues or for people who are interested in the environment. I'll give a trite example. Some members of the Environmental Commission have resigned for one reason or the other. It's time to appoint additional members. I'd be very curious to see who the town board's going to appoint. Are they going to appoint rubber stamp people who merely acquiesce with the continued lack of concern about the environment? Here's another specific question. We have by name, an extremely hard-working, proactive member of the town board, Gilman. He hasn't been reappointed yet. Why? It's my purpose to say what's on my mind. So I feel that somehow, through a combination of political pressure, because this is a political agency and political appointees, we have to let the people on the town board and on the planning board recognize that we're extremely unhappy with their complete disregard for the environment. And not being a lawyer, I can't comment on it, but let's go back to the scenario that I built, that the tower is moved, that the owners put up half, the town puts up half, the $75,000 we the taxpayers have to pay because of, I don't know, dumbness or what have you on the part of the town board and the planning board. Maybe that would be a reasonable thing to bring suit against the combination of the two. You people didn't do what you were supposed to do. Because of your ineptitude, you caused an unreasonable expense for the taxpayers of town. Good. Let each one of you pay the appropriate prorated share of $5,000 or $7,000 or $9,000 to compensate the town for what you've done, period.
Everyone has very busy lives. People are going to be leaving. There's other things to do. Some people have to go to a funeral, which is going to take place in a couple minutes. When you come and go, if you don't want to leave this meeting by saying, yeah, it was another one of those great meetings, everyone said really neat things, and we went home and nothing happened. If you don't want to leave with that feeling, please, before you leave, sign one of the pieces of papers with your name and address and phone number if any of these topics or if any other topic that's been raised which isn't on the wall appeals to you, so that when you get home, someone will contact you and say, okay, let's get to work. Because if we all have a meeting and we all blow off steam with each other and we all walk home self-congratulated, we're going to be depressed tomorrow because we know nothing's going to happen. So if you don't want that feeling, please sign up before you leave. And most importantly, the back table is a place to sign up and contribute your dues if you want to join. And that would be extremely appreciative, because for no lights, it costs $5. It just costs money to exist in this world, and this organization is no different than any other.
I would just like to say something. So much of what has been raised here this afternoon astounds me, because I am the main mover and shaker, along with my friends and the Friends of Woodstock. We brought a lawsuit a year ago, and if you people had read the lawsuit, if you had read our ads and our letters, and had contacted us, most of these issues were outlined in the lawsuit. And I find the fact that you're going to ask the town to pay half of removing the tower crazy. We did not put the tower there. The people who put the tower there is WTZA and bad government, represented by the planning board and the town board. And if you people would support us, and many of you have supported our lawsuit, and I'm sure you'll continue to, but if you would support our lawsuit in a more consciousness-raised way and understand the issues of the lawsuit, and God knows we publicize them. Some of this, what's going on here today, amazes me. You're being redundant, and if you want to support a lawsuit that is in place, that is a viable lawsuit, that will take the tower off if it gets a just hearing in the courts or even on appeal, support the Friends lawsuit. If you want to bring your own lawsuit, fine, and we'll support you on that. We'll give you some of our information. But I think you're all starting behind the eight ball here, and you're not really up to speed on what has gone down in the last year. And I feel my group, which I think is a damn hard-working group, maybe we haven't done our job. Maybe we're just not, I hear things from people who do know a lot about town government, and they're just repeating themselves, and they're not really clued into what's happening. So if you want to get that damn tower down, as I do, because the lights are a secondary issue. The tower is the main issue. Without the tower, you'd have no lights. Mr. Zweyer's, thank you. Mr. Zweyer's remark, I'm sure, was off the top of the head, just like you say, and so's your old man. It's that kind of remark, I'm sure of it. Because we've dealt with these people now for a year, and we know what kind of people they are. His remark, he'll pay for, if somebody else will pay for it, he'll take it down. I don't believe that for a minute. I mean, that's naivete. So, bear in mind what I'm saying. It is not that simple, and you must start with square one. Contact us and we'll fill you in.
I have to say something because I'm not defending the tower by any means, but I think that what disturbs me, the first thing we have up there, we've had it a long time, is the fire tower, and it's necessary. I think a little bit, and from certain areas, it disturbs the mountain and the lovely flow of the mountain. There's also another tower up there, which nobody ever mentions, is from some areas you can see it much more than you can see the other tower because it's thicker, it's darker. I mean, what are we talking about? Are we talking about having nothing on that mountain, which would be wonderful? But that doesn't sound like what it's talking about. There was also a windmill on that mountain for a long time. It's still standing there. It doesn't work, but it's still there. So I'm just wondering, I mean, as a member of the town board, I'm sort of wondering, what is it that we want? I'd like to see nothing up there, but we can't do that.
On state land.
Fire tower you can't take down. I'm not asking for an answer. I'm just saying what...
But also, you should really understand something. The first tower that went up there, the rules were adhered to. There was proper public notice. There was no amount of public dissension to that town.
So you're angry that they didn't...
So I don't think it's appropriate to put all the eggs in clean off the entire mountain basket. I think that this, the largest violator, people, had it up to here, and the basis...
About the looks or the way it was done, or both?
There are many things involved, but the primary issue is the violation of law. That is the primary issue. And the law, well, in ultimate reality, the law, we must, all of us, depend on equally for our own parameters.
Your particular brand of aesthetics or injury anywhere you want. If you want to say that my sense of justice was violated, that's fine. And if you want to say my sense of aesthetics was violated, that's fine. And if you want to say the radiation and the birds and the flowers and the hiking trail, that's fine too. I think that that should not break us up. That should bring us together. And if there's one thing at this point, at least, that a lot of people are very, very angry about, it's the lights. And that's what the purpose of this meeting. If that leads to other things or more things, fine. If that's the end of it, well, that's how life goes sometimes. But I don't think that we might have different philosophical reasons for our opposition should serve as a point of fragmentation. It should rather serve as a point of unity. So if you're offended because of the law, great, I am too. There are other times in which I don't like the law, and I don't argue that something should be changed because they violated the law. I say the whole system, it depends on the issue. In this particular case, this meeting was called, at any rate, to get the damn lights off the mountain, period.
Yeah. First of all, I think what the lady here on the town board, I guess, brought up, seems to me as an effort to sort of muddle and confuse the issue here, as far as linking that tower with other towers and saying, you know, should we clean them all off or not? That to me seems like an effort to diffuse our energy here. You know, the tower that we're talking about seems to me it's a battle line for not just this tower, but a larger issue. I mean, we're going to wake up to a day when we got towers on every high point in the Catskill if we don't stop this one now. And I'm talking about communication systems that are being deployed out on the flatlands that don't work in the mountains unless there's a tower on every high point. So we got to defeat this tower now and leave this linking it to other issues alone. And also this issue about some people are saying that if we take the lights down, that's enough. You know, I'm sorry to hear that kind of state of mind. You know, personally, from what I've heard here, I'm going to join the Friends of Woodstock and support their original lawsuit. And God, the problem here is the Woodstock town government. I mean, the Woodstock town government makes me angry every time I hear about something that they do. I mean, I don't know if they're getting bribed or if they're just elitist bigots or what, you know.
Yeah.
You know, but I'd like to see them out of there, you know, whether we have to recall them or we got an election coming up. You know, let's elect you know, some responsible. Obviously, it's going to have to be a Democrat. You know, the Republicans are totally discredited. So I want to see, you know, let's really concentrate on yanking that damn tower down and try not to, you know, confuse the people by linking it with some other, you know, the towers that are up there originally.
Well, the biggest problem is that Woodstock has lost its resistance to all these kind of blights that are going on. We had these things happen in the past 10 years of a shopping mall going up and this going up, and the people would all pack together and they would strike it down. Whereas now all these people have all walked off to the different corners of the world and forgot about the whole thing. So we had the warning about the Jesus Freak Tower going up, and it went up, and there was a few mutterings about it in the paper, and nothing happened. And we had the warning about this tower going up. So it went up one cloudy day. And still there was a few little mutterings in the paper, but nobody bothered to do anything else about it. So it's been a year now. And we went to the town board and asked them, why is this thing done? And not one of them could give you a clear answer of who knew what about it. And I think they're suffering from chronic amnesia, or they're a bunch of dirty liars. And that's it.
I think it's the wrong time to mistrust the town board. Maybe next month it'll be the right time to mistrust them. But at least in apparency, they have expressed that they want the lights off the tower. And the law, as it's written in their variant, says no lights. And I think that whether the individuals on the town board care about the lights or not, they, as individuals, have the self-respect to know that they've been trampled on by the television station. And their self-respect will cause them to bring their force to bear on the tower and on the lights. If they demonstrate that they're unable to do that, that doesn't diminish our capability as individuals from bringing our own intentions to bear on the situation. And I also feel that there are many solutions written on the walls here, and some of those solutions may be better than others, but each one of us in our own heart is inclined towards one of those. And I think as individuals, we have the authority within ourselves to bring our own opinions and force to bear on the television station. and that we shouldn't think that this group is the authority to the actions that we commit. The actions that we commit come from the authority within each of us. So I say that we approach this problem in as many ways as we can dream, and also that we not think that this is going to be a 2-week solution, and that we don't expect to drop our load all at once and affect the situation all at once, but prepare ourselves psychologically to be an ever-present force to bring that tower down, whether it takes a week or a month or a year or 10 years, that we won't stop until the tower is down. We not expect it to happen all at once.
That was on my list. I totally agree with you. If you want, I think that it's karmically set. I think the tower is going to come down, but I think it's going to take a lot of work in 2 or 3 years, perhaps. But I think it's absolutely important to attend town meetings, and they're terminally boring. They're exasperating. There's a bunch of slow learners on some of these boards, and there's some people they don't even know. Many of the members of these boards don't even know the facts of the issues being presented to them. But it has to be said, there are some good people on the boards. A couple, like John Ludwig on the planning board's a decent guy, environmentally sensitive. On the town board, we have an environmentally sensitive person, Eileen Cromer. So it's not. Wait. And it's an election year. All right. Secondly, I would like to agree also, though, with the gentleman back here that a deputation ought to be put together to go cease fire and work it out. And the same deputation should feel like they should maybe contact the DEC, contact the state, find out how this environmental bond money is going to be given out, sort of work for an overall solution, political, otherwise, environmental bond issue, go to Schweier, try to make, you got to give your opponent a way out. You can't lock Schweier, I've seen him in action. I watched him when he came to the town to get the special use permit. He's basically a middle-of-the-road liberal. I mean, he's got some good qualities. And I know from inside the station, we have spies, we have fairly high-placed spies that tell us things, and that they have, believably, I believe it when this person told me that they have looked into other sites for their tower, and it isn't totally out of the question that they might move their tower. So I think his idea to go cease fire and holding in back an economic boycott, and in back of the hand also possible lawsuits, because I think lawsuits, economic boycott, pressure on Schweier, and the DEC, it's all part of the equation, so I think it should be a deputation. As for developing information, Friends of Woodstock, we have all the information that would be required for setting up a chronology to know exactly what happened when. We have all these documents, like all the planning board notes, going all the way back to 1981, when they said it would be 200 feet, 50 feet shorter than the fire tower and so forth. We have all this information that can be put together in a chronology. It's in our lawyer's office, or it's in the planning board office. You can get the information anytime you want. So that's all I have to say.
There's no question about that. The other point that you raised that I would like to underline, which is that the pressure has to be continuous. It always amazes me how sensitive public bodies are to pressure, even though, as I said before, they always maintain that they're not. If 10 people write letters to the editor one week in the Woodstock Times, it appears as though everybody's up in arms about this. In fact, it may only be 10 people. I mean, it probably isn't, but what I'm saying is that one letter is misperceived by the power as being 100 letters, and there's no reason in the world why not to capitalize upon that. And if it means all you're going to do when you go home tonight is write a letter, write a letter. If you're going to sign something, but you've got to do something other than say, I spoke my piece, and gee, I'm pissed off because the tower isn't down. It involves work and effort and money, and it's a drag. But unless we're going to do it, I'm not going to keep it up, and I don't think anyone else is either. Yep.
I know this is Woodstock. We all have a sense of righteousness and justice, but I don't think that there's a lot of that in the real world, and that I think that while we'd like to believe that the lawsuit may eventually prevail, I think that in my brushes with courtrooms, I find that what ends up is not really reasonable necessarily, or it may be reasonable, but it's not always righteous justice. And I think that in the larger realm of getting the tower off the mountain, I think what it is what we've all been talking about, unrelenting pressure brought on a number of friends, because all of a sudden, it's just like the spring thaw, everything will crack and things will start to move. But unless you consistently pressure on all fronts, on the economic fronts, on political fronts, it doesn't happen. They keep up this front of thinking, well, you know, it's just a bunch of crazies, and they'll shout and they'll go away. I think that what we need is some sort of directed, orchestrated action where somebody perhaps coordinates letters to the editor and says, okay, it's your week. You know, you, and you, write a letter. It's your week to go to the town board and bring in placards and lean on people. I think that the boycott's being overlooked in the sense that I don't think that WTZA gives a shit about what we're doing. It just sees us as whining around, and they can push off lawsuits. And you'd like to think that because we've got a suit in, something is going to happen to it. But what happens is that power and influence and money generally prevails against body count unless that body count gets up and really raises a ruckus. Consequently, I think what we can do to hurt WTZA directly is to have a boycott. And it's a simple enough matter. It isn't a difficult one. All we need to do is start compiling a list of who advertises on WTZA. Now, that's a simple enough thing to do because most of us have, or enough of us have, a VCR. All you do is set the thing going, and then you fast forward through all the content, and you pick out the ads, you write them down, and I'd be perfectly happy to do this, and I will do it. You put these names on a Xerox address sheet, which is a simple matter. I don't know if you've ever seen one of these things. You type them out once, and you run it through a Xerox machine, and you get a bunch of peel-off labels. You distribute this master sheet around. Everybody makes their own peel-off copy, or you, if they send you a little bit of money, you send them the peel-off thing. You stick that on the front of a postcard, write your little note on the back, and pretty soon all those people who are advertising, not because they're really getting anything out of it, but because, gee, I'd like to see my name on the television station, get a real feeling that there's a groundswell of people out there who hate the guts of what the station represents. And it's a simple matter. I'm willing to do it. I put my name down on the boycott list. All we need is something like a chain letter. Only this one will do something good. And it won't just be some ridiculous
boycott
thing. The other thing is, in concerted action, we could really do something in the political end, where if there's elections coming up, let's have a Friends of Woodstock slate. Let's push for it. Let's get up and go to the various polling places, pass out simple sheets, not a big, fine type diatribe, because that doesn't get us anywhere. But just some of the grossest things that have happened, and put it to the people. And if you think that the town board is going to change, or the planning board is going to change, or that WTZA and Ed Swire, who is such a fine, righteous guy who has pictures of, by the Hudson River School in his home up in Sarasota Springs, is going to change, you're out of your skull. Sorry, but I don't believe it for a second. What is happening is that these people are being put on their mettle a little bit. Not much at this point, but you've got to really sock it to them. You've got to let them know. I was in the McCarthy campaigns back in, whenever it was, and we took over a ward this way. Everybody, they just assumed that 5 people were going to show up, the same old slate was going to be elected, but we snowballed them. And we didn't win the state, but we won close to better than a third of the state. And that kind of thing can happen. But there's got to be direction. I think the Friends of Woodstock have a nucleus. But I think we've really got to see them as coordinators, and we've all got to do some foot soldier work. And it's got to be consistent. I guess that's what I have to say. We need orchestrated action on politics and on economics, besides the legal suit. That could drag on forever, unless the judge realizes that there's really people out there that are upset and disturbed, and it will.
Don't think that judges sit in ivory towers and issue rulings without reading the newspaper, without testing the temperature outside. They do. And the more pressure there is, the more things happen. It's a fact of democratic life.
Everybody wants a mailing list. Put it on the boycott form in the back, and I'll make sure and get you out a list of advertisers on the station.
There's apple cider and orange juice in the back with cups if anyone wants to
What about
refresh
getting in touch
themselves.
with the judge? Is there any way we can do that? Can we write to the judge?
Well, WDST, Friends of Woodstock has an attorney, and the attorney will or will not get in touch with the judge, depending on what
about other people
direction.
who know that the case is before him?
There's a legal organization in Albany, I think, that you can prevail on. There's a legal organization that sits on judicial conduct, and I think that would probably be the appropriate avenue.
Alan, not that one would ask you to give bad advice, but listening to what you just said, you said judges are aware of reality. Is it bad form for someone to write a note and say, "Dear Judge, I think that"?
One of the judges sitting on the FOW case. The answer may be yes, the answer may be no. If I knew more about that case, and if I was the attorney for that case, I'd maybe be in a position to give you an answer. I don't know. There's sometimes, if you go in and you say, "Hey, Judge, this case has been in front of you for 6 months, how about an opinion?" The judges is likely not say, "Oh, you want an opinion, suspect? Okay, here's your opinion, denied, see ya." That's the risk you take of offending. I mean, there's a certain level of respect. On the other hand, sometimes, I don't know is the answer. Yeah.
I think negative publicity is of incredible importance in all of this. I know from working in media in New York for years that the last thing you want is your name everywhere connected to something terrible. And if these people are portrayed loud and clear as doing something that's aesthetically hateful to the people who love this place in this valley, they come on and they have their Hudson River shots and all this kind of stuff. I mean, they're obviously trying to project this kind of image that they're sensitive to this. If it's said loud and clear over and over again that they're not, either by, boycotting them or picketing them or whatever you have to do, it seems to me you need to get, like, the Kingston Freeman reporting on it. You need to get other media reporting on it. You need it to be on their newscast. And how are you going to do that?
Picketing in front of their door.
Picketing in front of their door. I mean, I think that they need the embarrassment. The fact that this man came out in an Albany paper and said, "Gee, maybe we will move the tower." He can take his lawsuits and that's going to worry him, but he's going to have his lawyer worry about that. Him on the front page looking like a creep with people picketing him is going to count more. Can't help but think so.
How many people listen to WATV? Fair numbers? Well, whether you know it or not, their repeater station that they're looking to put in would be on Moncure's Tower, which I can live with to some degree. But the point of the matter is that they're trying to sit this one out. And I think that in the realm of what you're talking about, it would be something to put them on their middle to say, "Hey, look, we've got a real environmental situation here, and why don't you really show your honesty?" Because as people in this area, we know you're going to put in a repeater down here. We'd like a repeater down here, but we want it done in an environmentally sensitive way, and we'd like some you to show some guts about this and really come out. And I think if all of you, I wrote David Chartock, who's the chairman of the board, if you do that as well, maybe we could get something on this. The thing is, you bring this all out into the light, and all of a sudden they're sort of cringing there in the spotlight. And that's the kind of thing that counts. You get it in people's consciousness. If they don't know about it, they can't vote about it.
What would be useful to me, and perhaps to others here, as we get ideas of ways that we can pursue this problem, what I need is a legal counsel so that after I get an idea, I can go to a lawyer and say, this is what I want to do. What are the legal ramifications if I do this, especially regarding boycott? If there were a lawyer available to give us opinions about the directions that we choose to pursue, that would be very useful to me. Friends of Woodstock lawyer? Okay.
I'll make this the last question because rather than have it peter out, I'd rather see it end. But if you want to talk with each other, or me, or whomever, after this question and have some cider, feel free.
I just want to reiterate that I think bringing pressure to bear on the town board and planning board, it would be valuable at this point. I think that the lights have proved to be an embarrassment to them, and we shouldn't let them squirm out of it being an embarrassment to them. I don't think that we should stop at letting the lights come down or getting the lights to come down, but we should use it as leverage to get the tower to come down. And I think that with real political pressure threatening their re-elections, they really ought to maybe move in our behalf to try to make up for their mistakes. I think they are susceptible to political pressure, although not easily susceptible. So I think it's there's some work to be done in that area.
One more thing. Just for any of you that are interested in the lawsuit that Friends of Woodstock has pending, which touches on a lot of the issues that we've talked about here, including very strong environmental issues, which is also one of the reasons that we're now involved in a lawsuit against the Rubco project, because it's basically such an environmental disgrace, really. We have a copy of the lawsuit at the Woodstock Post-Express, which gives a lot of information about what Friends of Woodstock is doing. We have a file there. If any of you are interested in seeing what our lawsuit is about, it would probably be a really good idea to go over and see it. And I just want to end up by saying myself that I feel like we're all here essentially for the same reason. We're here because we care about this town. And I wouldn't want to leave feeling like there's any kind of like split or things going in lots of different directions. It seems to me that we've all got to pull together and kind of get behind the same issue and the same project and stay in touch with each other and just try to fight the thing that we really abhor, which is at this point the tower and the lights on the tower.
One other thing related to what Jane was just talking about. Robbie Dupree, who's also on the steering committee of the Friends of Woodstock, the organization that mobilized things and got together a legal objection to the tower in the beginning, Robbie spoke about the process that allowed this violation. Somebody doesn't like the lights. Somebody doesn't like the whirring noise that looks like an airfield up there next to the hiking trail on state land that's supposed to be forever wild, pristine. That kind of violation. The process that allowed it must change. And that, to me, is one of the most significant, one of the most important things about the whole thing. Change that process. Get people in there who will be responsible, who will follow the law, who will pay attention to, if 100 people or 50 people come out and say, hey, this isn't right, take a look at it, take a hard look at it. The law says you're supposed to, and they don't. Well, we got to change those people too. Either change their minds or change the people who they are. Vote them out, unappoint them.
So when are you going to run for town board?
Well, hopefully I'm
Rebuffed again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching live coverage of the tower discussion here at the Community Center at Woodstock. I hope some of you who are watching this program came down. You're welcome to. It's an open meeting. For further information, let's find out. I guess you know who to get in touch with. It's a small town. Friends of Woodstock. The organizer of this meeting was Alan Sussman, and certainly you can direct your comments to Letters Department of the Woodstock Times, to the town board of the town of Woodstock. Thank you for tuning in, and now we'll bring you back to our message wheel.